Abraham Lincoln was a big man. He was tall, gangly, but strong. People remember him as a president, a leader during the Civil War. But many also know a story about him wrestling. Was he a champion wrestler? This is a question people still ask. The answer is not simple, not like today with official titles and matches, but for his time and his place, he was definitely a force. He had a reputation, a big one. This part of his life tells us a lot about who he was. Lincoln grew up in a tough world. It was the American frontier. Life was hard. People worked with their hands. They cleared land, built cabins, farmed. Strength was not just a good thing to have, it was necessary. It helped you survive. Lincoln started life in Kentucky, then moved to Indiana, and later to Illinois. Each place was wild, untamed. There were no gyms or organized sports leagues. Entertainment was simple. People gathered for barn raisings, log rollings, or just to talk. And sometimes to wrestle. Wrestling in those days was different from what you see now. It was called row and tumble or catch as catch can. There weren't many rules. The goal was to throw your opponent, pin them, or make them give up. It was a test of raw strength, balance, and grit. Sometimes it was how disputes were settled. Two men would argue, and instead of a fight with fists or weapons, they'd wrestle. The winner gained respect. The loser learned to back down. Lincoln was born in 1809. By the time he was a young man, he was unusually tall. He grew to be 6 feet 4 inches. This made him stand out. He was lanky, but don't let that fool you. He had incredible strength. He worked hard from a young age. He split rails, chopped wood, did heavy farm labor. This work built his muscles, made him tough. He could outwork most men, and he could out-wrestle many of them too. His wrestling reputation really took hold when he lived in New Salem, Illinois. This was in the early 1830s. New Salem was a small village, a new settlement. It was full of strong, independent people. Among them was a group called the Clary's Grove Boys. They were known for being a bit wild, very strong, and always up for a challenge. They were the local tough guys. They ran the town, in a way. One of their leaders was a man named Jack Armstrong. He was the strongest, the best wrestler among them. People said he was the champion of Clary's Grove. When Lincoln arrived in New Salem, he worked at Denton Offut's store. He was the new guy. The Clary's Grove boys wanted to test him. They often tested new people. It was a way to see if they belonged, if they were tough enough. So the challenge came. Jack Armstrong was going to wrestle Lincoln. It was a big event for the town. People gathered to watch. This wasn't just a friendly match. It was about respect, about establishing who was boss. Lincoln, with his quiet way, agreed to the match. He knew what it meant. He knew he had to prove himself. The wrestling match began. Jack Armstrong was strong, skilled in the frontier style. But Lincoln had his height and his surprising strength. He also had a long reach. The story goes that Armstrong tried to trip Lincoln to throw him down, but Lincoln held his ground. He used his height to his advantage. He grabbed Armstrong, picked him up, and threw him to the ground. Some versions say he slammed him hard. After the throw, the Clary's Grove boys were angry. They started to rush Lincoln. They didn't like seeing their champion beaten. Lincoln stood his ground. He held up his hands and said he would fight them all, one at a time. He showed courage, not just physical strength. Jack Armstrong, to his credit, stopped his friends. He saw that Lincoln had won fairly. He shook Lincoln's hand and became his friend. This win changed everything for Lincoln in New Salem. It earned him the respect of the Clary's Grove boys. They stopped bothering him. In fact, they became his supporters. They saw him as one of them, but also as someone special. He was strong, fair, and brave. This event was a turning point. It cemented his reputation as a powerful man, a man who could handle himself. He became known as a wrestler who could not be beaten. His wrestling skills opened doors for him. Well, they gave him a standing in the community that his quiet nature might not have otherwise provided so quickly. He was a champion in the eyes of the people of New Salem. After the New Salem wrestling match with Jack Armstrong, Lincoln's reputation grew. It wasn't just about winning one fight, it was about how he won and how he handled himself afterward. He didn't gloat. He showed fairness. This helped people see him as more than just a strong man. They saw him as a man of character. His fame as a wrestler spread through the small communities in Illinois. People talked about him. They admired his strength. Did he keep wrestling all the time? Probably not as much. As Lincoln got older, his life changed. He started working in the legal field. He began studying law. He got involved in politics. These pursuits didn't leave much time for wrestling matches. But the legend of his wrestling stayed with him. It was part of his story, part of how people knew him. It added to his image. His physical prowess, his ability to win on the mat helped him in other areas. It taught him about standing up for himself. It taught him about facing challenges head on. These were lessons that would serve him well in politics and law. Debates in those days could be fierce. They sometimes involved personal attacks. A man needed to be able to stand his ground, not just with words, but with an unspoken confidence that came from knowing he was physically capable. Lincoln's strength wasn't just for wrestling. He was known for being able to lift heavy things. He could split an incredible amount of rails in a day. This kind of strength showed his resilience. It showed his ability to work hard. People respected that. In a time when physical labor was central to life, Lincoln excelled at it. This gave him common ground with most people. He understood their lives because he lived that life too. The move from physical contests to intellectual and political ones was gradual for Lincoln. But the qualities he showed as a wrestler were useful. He was determined. He thought strategically. He didn't give up easily. In a wrestling match, you have to think about your opponent's moves. You have to plan your own. You have to find weaknesses. These are skills that are also important in law and politics. The claim that he was a champion wrestler needs a bit of understanding. There weren't national wrestling federations or Olympic medals back then. There were no official titles like world champion. A champion in that time and place meant the best in a community, the person who couldn't be beaten by anyone local. And Lincoln held that title in New Salem. He was considered the best. He was known to have wrestled around 300 matches and lost only one. Even that one loss is disputed in some accounts. The stories say he was almost impossible to throw. He used his long limbs like levers. He was quick for his size. He knew how to use his weight and reach. He was not just strong, he was smart about it. People didn't just fear his strength, they respected his ability. His wrestling background helped shape his identity as a public figure. It made him relatable to the common person. He wasn't some soft, educated elite. He was a man of the people, forged in the hard life of the frontier. He could talk to farmers, laborers, and rough and tumble men because he had shared their experiences. He had proven his worth in a way they understood through strength and honesty. This image of a physically strong, fair, and capable man was an asset. It gave him credibility. When he spoke, people listened, partly because they knew he wasn't someone to be trifled with. He commanded respect. This early chapter of his life, filled with physical challenges and triumphs, laid a foundation for the leader he would become. It showed he could face down a challenge, win fairly, and earn respect even from his opponents. This was a powerful lesson that would echo through his later, more famous years. Let's think about how Lincoln actually wrestled. The style back then, catch as catch can, meant almost anything went. It wasn't about fancy holds or intricate moves like modern wrestling. It was about strength, leverage, and getting your opponent to the ground. Imagine two men grappling, trying to trip each other, trying to get a good grip on the other's body or clothes. The goal was to throw someone down and pin them. Sometimes it was just about making them cry enough or admit defeat. Lincoln's unique build was key to his success. He was very tall, 6 feet 4 inches. But he wasn't a giant block of muscle. He was described as lanky or even raw-boned. His strength came from his long limbs and his powerful back. He had a long reach. This was a huge advantage in grappling. He could keep opponents at a distance or reach around them more easily. His height made him hard to trip or take down. His center of gravity was high, but he knew how to use his long legs to maintain balance. He wasn't just relying on brute force, he understood leverage, he used his long arms and legs to create powerful throws. He could lift men and slam them. This wasn't just about being strong, it was about knowing how to use that strength effectively. He was agile for his size too. People talked about his quickness. This combination of height, strength, reach, and agility made him a formidable opponent. His wrestling for Lincoln was more than just a physical activity, it was a character builder. Every match taught him something. It taught him patience. You can't just rush in without thinking. You need to wait for an opening. It taught him strategy. You have to anticipate your opponent's moves. You have to plan your own. You need to adapt if your plan doesn't work. It also taught him about handling pressure. In a public match, with everyone watching, the tension is high. You have to perform. You have to keep your cool. Lincoln learned to do this. He learned to control his emotions even when things got rough. And when he won with humility. He didn't boast. This showed his respect for his opponents and for the sport itself. This was a quality that people remembered and admired. His wrestling background deeply shaped his public image. It made him a man of the people. He wasn't seen as weak or soft. He was seen as strong, capable, and someone who could hold his own. This resonated with the common person of the frontier, who valued these traits. They saw him as one of them, but also as someone who had risen above. He embodied the rugged individual spirit of the frontier. The physical nature of wrestling also taught him mental toughness. A long match drains you. You have to push through pain. You have to keep going, even when you're tired. This kind of resilience is not just physical, it's deeply mental. It's about not giving up. This mental toughness would be invaluable later in his life, especially during the immense pressures of the presidency and the Civil War. He learned to endure. People talked about his wrestling for years. It became part of the Lincoln legend. When he entered politics, his reputation as a strong man went with him. It wasn't just folklore. It was something people genuinely remembered or had heard about from reliable sources. This image of him as a powerful, fair wrestler gave him a certain gravitas. It added to his charisma. He wasn't just a smart man, he was also a physically imposing one. This combination was powerful. It helped him command respect in a time and place where physical strength was highly valued. It showed he was no stranger to hard work or direct confrontation. This part of his life, often overlooked, was a crucial foundation for the man who would later guide a nation through its darkest hour. It showed he was a fighter, in every sense of the word. The skills Lincoln learned on the wrestling mat did not just disappear when he left New Salem. They stayed with him, they became part of who he was, and in many ways those skills translated directly into his leadership, especially during the Civil War. It wasn't physical wrestling anymore, but it was wrestling nonetheless. He had to grapple with immense problems, with people, and with the fate of the nation. Think about the Civil War. It was a long, brutal struggle. It required incredible strength, not just from the soldiers, but from the president. And Lincoln had to wrestle with secession. He had to hold the Union together. This was a fight against powerful forces, much like a wrestling match against a formidable opponent. He had to use all his strength, all his strategic thinking, all his endurance. He also wrestled with his generals. Sometimes they were slow, sometimes they didn't follow orders. He had to push them, cajole them, sometimes replace them. This was a constant battle of wills, a test of his leadership. He had to be firm but also understanding. He had to find a way to get the best out of people, even when they were difficult. This is like a wrestler trying to find an opening, trying to outmaneuver an opponent. Public opinion was another opponent. Not everyone supported the war. Not everyone supported his policies. Lincoln had to argue his case. He had to convince people. He had to show them the path forward. This was like a debate, but also a kind of wrestling match for the hearts and minds of the people. He had to withstand criticism, absorb the blows, and keep moving forward. Even within his own cabinet, there were strong personalities. Different opinions. Lincoln had to manage these conflicts. He had to unite his team. He had to be the strong center that held everyone together. This required immense patience and a strategic mind. He had to know when to push, when to yield, and when to stand firm. These are all lessons you learn in a wrestling match. His ability to withstand blows, both political and emotional, was remarkable. The war took a terrible toll on him. He lost a son during his presidency. He carried the weight of hundreds of thousands of lives lost. He faced constant criticism and threats, but he did not give up. He endured. This unwavering perseverance, this refusal to yield, echoes the mental toughness learned in wrestling. He learned how to go the distance. His confidence in handling confrontation also came from his early wrestling days. He wasn't afraid to face a challenge directly. He learned to stand his ground. This confidence translated into his leadership. When he made a decision, he stood by it. When he faced a powerful adversary, he didn't back down. This resolute demeanor was a part of his public persona, built over years of proving himself. The physical strength he developed in his youth also likely helped with the sheer demands of the presidency. The long hours, the constant stress, the lack of sleep. A strong body can help a person endure a strong mind. His physical resilience gave him a base from which to draw during the most challenging period of American history. Did he ever talk about his wrestling past during his presidency? It's not something he brought up often, but it was part of his lore. People knew it. When new people met him, they might have heard about his strength. It added to the aura of the man. It made him seem even more grounded, more truly American. He was not just a politician, he was a man who had earned his place through hard work and proven strength. In a very real sense, the Civil War was Lincoln's ultimate wrestling match. It was the biggest, most difficult contest of his life. And he approached it with the same determination, the same strategic mind, and the same unyielding spirit that he had shown on the wrestling mat in New Salem. The lessons learned in those rough and tumble matches helped prepare him for the greatest fight of his life, saving the Union. So was Abraham Lincoln a champion wrestler? We have talked a lot about his early life, his strength, and his wrestling matches. Now let's put it all together and be clear about what champion means in his context. Today, a champion wrestler is someone who wins official tournaments, gets medals, or holds a title belt. They compete in organized events with strict rules and referees. This was not the world Lincoln lived in. In his time, especially on the frontier, wrestling was informal. It was about individual challenges, community bragging rights, and settling local disputes. There were no official records of matches, no point systems, no national rankings. A champion was simply the person in a community who couldn't be beaten. They were the strongest, the most skilled, the one everyone talked about. By this definition, yes, Lincoln was a champion. Most historical sources agree on a few key points. He was incredibly strong. He was very tall and used his height and reach to his advantage. He was known for his fairness and integrity, even in a rough sport, and critically, he rarely, if ever, lost a match. The one often cited loss is still debated. He wrestled hundreds of matches, mostly local, and proved himself dominant. The famous match against Jack Armstrong in New Salem is the best example. Armstrong was the local champion of Clary's Grove. Lincoln beat him. And by beating him, Lincoln took that title. He became the recognized best wrestler in that area. This wasn't a small thing. It earned him immense respect and opened doors for him in the community. It is important to separate fact from embellishment. Over time, legends grow, stories get bigger. But the core truth remains strong. Lincoln was an exceptionally talented and formidable wrestler. He had a reputation for being unbeatable in fair combat. He earned that reputation through genuine skill and strength, not through hype. His wrestling wasn't just a footnote in his life, it was a foundational experience. It taught him about himself, it taught him about people, it taught him how to handle challenges, how to stand his ground, and how to earn respect. These were lessons that shaped his character and prepared him for the incredible leadership challenges he would face later. He was not a champion in the modern sense of holding a specific trophy or belt, but he was a champion in the sense that mattered most for his time and place. He was the undisputed best, the one everyone knew could not be defeated. He was a man of immense physical and mental strength, a strength forged in the wrestling rings of the American frontier. This part of his life tells us that the man who saved the Union was not just a brilliant thinker and orator. He was also a man of action, a man who understood physical struggle, and a man who had proven his mettle in the toughest of contests. His wrestling background contributed to the aura of strength, resilience, and integrity that defined him. He was a champion of the people, not just on the mat, but in life. He earned his title, whatever name you give it. He was a formidable force.